They say a single moment can reveal the truth about a person, or about a whole system. On a crowded Tuesday afternoon at New York's Kennedy International Airport, hundreds of passengers waited at Gate C9 for Flight 281 to Atlanta. Parents juggled children, business travelers typed furiously on laptops, and the low hum of voices filled the air like distant thunder. Then, in one corner of the gate, everything went silent. A sharp voice sliced through the noise. "Sir, this ticket doesn't belong to you. Step aside. Security will handle it." The voice came from Clara Jenkins, the gate supervisor. Neat uniform, perfect bun, an expression carved from stone. In front of her stood Marcus Reed, a man in his mid-40s wearing faded jeans, a simple black hoodie, and worn sneakers. He looked like someone who had traveled hard and worked harder. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He just stood there holding a first-class boarding pass. Clara snatched it from his hand and tore it cleanly in half. The pieces drifted to the polished floor between them like falling snow. A few gasps echoed through the gate. A little boy stopped chewing his candy. A college student lowered her phone mid-text. Marcus didn't move. He just looked down at the torn paper, then back at the woman who had destroyed it. His voice was steady. "Ma'am, I believe there's been a mistake." "There's no mistake," Clara said, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. "We don't tolerate counterfeit tickets. You can buy an economy seat at the counter if you'd like to continue your trip." Her words were louder than they needed to be, echoing off the terminal windows. Marcus's eyes softened. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out another boarding pass. This one heavier, printed on thick cardstock with gold lettering that shimmered under the fluorescent lights. "Would you like to check this one?" he asked quietly. Clara froze for a heartbeat, then scoffed. "People like you always try these tricks. Nice prop, but you're not fooling anyone." That phrase, "people like you," hung in the air, heavy and sour. Some passengers shifted uncomfortably. Others looked down, pretending not to see. But one woman didn't look away. Sitting near the next gate was Emily Park, a 22-year-old journalism student waiting for her connecting flight to Denver. She had a habit of filming everyday moments for her social media page, small human stories that showed how people behaved under pressure. Without thinking, she opened her phone and went live. Her voice was barely a whisper. "If you're watching this, you're about to see something that doesn't feel right." The viewer count on her screen jumped from 12 to 90 in seconds. Meanwhile, Clara crossed her arms, satisfied with her decision. "I've seen this scam before," she said loudly. "Print a fake ticket, flash it with confidence, and hope nobody checks the system. Not on my watch." A businessman nearby raised his hand politely. "Excuse me, I actually saw this gentleman check in at the first-class counter earlier. He's legitimate." Clara gave him a cold glance. "Sir, please return to your seat before I have security escort you too." The businessman sat down, his face red with anger. Emily's live stream buzzed with comments. "This looks bad. What airline is this? Keep recording." Within 3 minutes, hundreds of people were watching. Marcus stayed composed. "I checked in online this morning," he said. "My confirmation number is—" "I don't need your story," Clara interrupted. "I need you to move." Her voice grew louder, almost performative. She wanted the crowd to see that she was in charge. She gestured toward Marcus's chest. "This is your final warning." The crowd was divided. Some whispered that she must be right. Others said nothing at all. Then came a small voice from the front row. A 5-year-old girl tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, why is that lady being mean to him?" The mother had no answer. She just whispered, "Don't worry, sweetie," and held her close. Marcus calmly opened his phone and displayed a digital boarding pass. Seat 1A confirmed. He offered it to Clara, who didn't even glance. "Fake digital tickets are even easier," she snapped. "Nice try." Emily's viewers exploded with outrage. "This is unbelievable. He's showing proof." Someone called the news. The tension spread like wildfire. Every eye in the gate turned toward the confrontation. The air felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. 12 years on the job had made Clara confident, maybe too confident. She had handled rowdy passengers, missed connections, and even flight cancellations with ease. But she had never faced a man who stayed this calm. His stillness unnerved her. "Listen carefully," she said, pointing at him again. "You have 60 seconds before I call security." Marcus nodded once. "Do what you think is right," he said. And that was when she made the call that would change her life. Clara lifted the receiver and spoke sharply into the mouthpiece. Security to gate C9. We have a disruptive passenger refusing to comply. The public announcement tone pinged through the terminal. Heads turned. Phones tilted upward. Conversations faded into tense silence. Emily's live stream was now crossing 1,200 viewers. Comments scrolled so fast she couldn't keep up. He's staying calm. She's going too far. Keep filming. A middle-aged man near the window texted his wife. Witnessing discrimination at JFK, it's awful. Within seconds, his wife shared the message on her Facebook page, and the chain reaction began. Clara straightened her jacket, confident that she'd handled the situation professionally. But inside, a small flicker of unease began to grow. Something about Marcus's quiet composure unsettled her. He wasn't arguing. He wasn't pleading. He was simply waiting. 2 security officers arrived minutes later, their heavy boots echoing against the marble floor. The senior one, Officer Ramirez, scanned the scene carefully. His partner, Officer Patel, hovered close, hand resting on his radio. "What's going on here?" Ramirez asked. Clara pointed at Marcus. "This man tried to board with a fake first-class ticket. He became argumentative when I refused." Ramirez looked at the torn paper pieces on the floor, then at the gold-lettered card Marcus still held. He picked it up, examined it under the light, then studied Marcus's license. "Sir, this looks valid," he said slowly. Clara's jaw tightened. "I'm telling you, it's fake. People like him don't travel in first class." The words landed with the weight of a hammer. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emily's stream shot past 3,000 viewers. Someone shouted from the back, "Did she just say that out loud?" Ramirez's expression hardened. "Ma'am, let's keep this professional." But it was too late. The story was already spreading. At the gate next door, a teenage boy whispered to his friend, "This is blowing up online. Look, JFK discrimination is trending." Clara noticed the eyes on her. She crossed her arms defensively. "I'm just doing my job." The supervisor arrived, Linda Harris, a tall woman with a headset and a clipboard. "What's the issue here?" Clara spoke first, her words tumbling out fast. "He presented a fraudulent first-class ticket. I followed standard protocol." Linda's eyes flicked to the crowd of raised phones. Her instincts screamed PR nightmare. "Sir," she said to Marcus, "we need to resolve this quietly." "You're disrupting boarding," a voice rose from the crowd. It was the elderly businessman from before. "Disrupting? He hasn't moved an inch. You're the ones causing chaos." The crowd murmured agreement. Several passengers nodded. Emily's live comments flew by. "They're gaslighting him. This is painful to watch." Linda ignored the noise and reached for the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief delay due to a security concern. Please remain seated." The collective groan of 200 people filled the space. No one sat down. Ramirez frowned. "Ma'am, I verified his ticket and ID. Everything seems legitimate." "Security doesn't decide validity," Linda snapped. "Airline staff does. And as of now, he's not cleared to board." That sentence changed everything. The crowd erupted in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" "Check the system." "He has proof." Emily whispered to her phone. "They're doubling down instead of apologizing." The viewer count hit 10,000. Marcus finally spoke again, his voice steady and deep. "Ma'am, I'd like to speak to someone above you." Linda gave a small, humorless laugh. "I'm the final authority at this gate." A heavy pause followed. Every passenger could feel that something larger was about to unfold. Then Marcus's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen and gave a small, knowing smile. "Actually, someone might be coming to help with that." Clara rolled her eyes. "Oh, please." "No one's coming to rescue you." But the crowd sensed it. The shift in energy, the quiet confidence returning to Marcus's voice. He wasn't bluffing. He knew something they didn't. 15 seconds later, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the terminal. A man in a charcoal suit appeared, breathing hard, his badge flashing as he approached. "Mr. Reed," he said, his tone both respectful and anxious. "My deepest apologies for this incident." Clara blinked. You know him?" The man turned toward her sharply. "Do I know him? That's Mr. Marcus Reed, Chief Executive Officer of Aerolink Holdings, the company that owns 30% of this airline's operations." The silence that followed was so complete you could hear the hum of the vending machines. Emily's live stream exploded. Tens of thousands of viewers flooded in, the chat filling with disbelief. "Wait, he's the CEO? No way, this is wild." Instant karma. Clara's knees went weak. Linda's clipboard slipped from her fingers. Officer Ramirez exhaled quietly, finally understanding why Marcus had been so calm. Marcus looked around the crowd and then back at Clara. You said people like me don't belong in first class. What did you mean by that? Clara opened her mouth, but no sound came out, and that was when the tide of the entire airport turned. The terminal seemed frozen in place. Every passenger stared at the man who, only moments ago, had been treated like a criminal. Now the truth stood in front of them. Marcus Reed wasn't just another traveler. He was the man whose company powered nearly a third of the planes that filled those same skies. Linda's face drained of color. Mr. Reed, there must be some kind of misunderstanding. Marcus's tone stayed even. Oh, there's no misunderstanding. Your gate agent accused me of fraud. Then your supervisor supported her without checking a single fact. Clara tried to find her voice. I was just following procedure. Which procedure includes tearing up a passenger's valid ticket? Marcus asked calmly. Which one encourages judging travelers based on appearance? The question hit harder than any raised voice could have. The crowd whispered among themselves. He's right, someone muttered. She didn't even check the computer. The man in the suit, Daniel Cross, head of airport operations, took a breath. Mr. Reed, please know this behavior does not reflect our company values. We'll handle this immediately. Marcus looked him straight in the eye. You already are handling it. In front of hundreds of witnesses and thousands more watching online. Emily's phone buzzed with notifications. Her live feed had crossed 25,000 viewers. Comments flooded in. This is history. He's teaching them what real power looks like. Accountability live on camera. Ramirez, the security officer, spoke carefully. Sir, I want to apologize personally. We were called under false pretenses. You were calm and compliant the entire time. Marcus nodded. You did your job, officer, professionally. Then he turned back to Clara and Linda. But they didn't. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Daniel cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Mr. Reed, let's step aside and discuss this privately. Marcus shook his head. No, this started publicly and it ends the same way. Everyone here deserves to see what accountability looks like. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A teenager whispered, He's not letting them hide this under the rug. Emily could barely hold her phone steady. He's standing up to them right here in the open, she whispered to her viewers. Daniel's radio buzzed. He turned slightly away to answer, voice low. Yes, I'm at gate C9. Yes, he's here, understood. His shoulders stiffened. When he faced Marcus again, his tone carried an uneasy respect. Mr. Reed, the airline's chief executive wants to speak with you directly. Clara's mouth fell open. The CEO? Of the airline? Marcus nodded once. Good. Let's not waste time. Within moments, Daniel handed Marcus a tablet already connected to a live video call. On the screen appeared Elaine Porter, the CEO of Sky Air, the carrier running Flight 281. Her usually composed face looked shaken. Mr. Reed, she began, her voice strained. Please allow me to express my sincerest apologies for what has taken place. Marcus's reply was calm but unwavering. Apologies are a start, Ms. Porter, but what I want to hear are your plans for real change. Elaine swallowed hard. We will take whatever corrective actions you deem necessary. Then let's make them clear, Marcus said, looking around at the crowd. Because the people watching this deserve transparency. Clara gripped the counter for support. Linda stared at the floor. Every second stretched. Marcus spoke evenly, every word deliberate. First, your gate agent here will be terminated for discriminatory conduct. Effective immediately. Elaine nodded without hesitation. Understood. Clara's breath hitched, but no one came to her defense. Second, Marcus continued, your supervisor, Ms. Harris, will be suspended without pay for 90 days. Mandatory bias and ethics training before reinstatement. Linda's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. Third, Marcus went on, you'll implement an AI-based bias detection system at every customer-facing point of contact. Cameras and software that flag discriminatory behavior automatically. This will prevent situations like this before they happen. Whispers spread through the terminal. That's genius, someone said softly. He's changing the whole industry. Fourth, Marcus said, every single Sky Air employee will undergo full diversity and accountability training, immediately. And fifth, your company will donate $1 million to organizations working for racial equality in the transportation industry. Elaine nodded again, her voice small but sincere. Agreed, all of it, but Marcus wasn't finished. Sixth, he said, I want a public apology posted within 24 hours. Not some corporate statement about customer service. A real acknowledgement that this was discrimination, that your employees acted unjustly, and that you will rebuild trust through action. Elaine exhaled slowly. You have my word. Marcus leaned closer to the tablet. And seventh, there will be full transparency. The results of every diversity audit must be shared publicly. No secrets, no spin. The terminal erupted in applause. Even the officers joined in, nodding quietly. Daniel wiped a hand over his face. We'll get everything in motion immediately. Marcus looked at the two women who had humiliated him an hour earlier. I don't hate you, he said quietly, but I want you to understand the cost of assumptions. You looked at me and saw less. I hope you'll learn to see people for who they really are. Emily whispered to her phone. He's giving them a lesson they'll never forget. Elaine's voice came through again, steady, but trembling. Mr. Reed, thank you for your patience. We will do better, Marcus nodded once. I'll hold you to that. He ended the call and turned toward the passengers. Thank you all for standing up for what's right. Justice only exists when people refuse to stay silent. The crowd cheered. Some cried. Phones captured every moment. Clara sank into her chair, shaking. Linda wiped her eyes. Ramirez exhaled like a man finally released from a storm. Marcus lifted his backpack, slung it over his shoulder, and walked toward the jet bridge. But before he stepped through, he looked back at the crowd one last time. Always remember, he said, his voice calm but powerful. Dignity doesn't ask for permission. And with that, he boarded the plane. Outside the gate, hundreds of phones continued streaming, millions of viewers now watching live. The story was only just beginning to ripple outward. By the next morning, the entire country was talking about Gate C9. The video from Emily's live stream had spread across every platform, millions of views, thousands of comments, entire threads debating the incident. News anchors replayed the moment Clara said, "People like you." Editorials called it a turning point for accountability. At Sky Air headquarters in Dallas, executives crowded around screens. Elaine Porter looked 10 years older than the day before. The company's stock had dropped 6% overnight. Reporters camped outside the building. Every hour brought new headlines. Marcus Reed hadn't said another word publicly. He hadn't posted, hadn't given interviews. That silence only made people more curious. Inside a small conference room, Clara sat stiffly across from Human Resources. Her badge lay on the table beside a termination letter. "You're releasing me?" she asked quietly. The HR director's voice was calm. "You tore up a valid ticket and made a racially charged statement in front of hundreds of witnesses." "The company has no choice." Clara's eyes welled up. "I didn't mean—" "It's not about intent," the director interrupted. "It's about impact." Two security staff waited by the door as Clara packed her belongings. Her 12 years of service ended with a single cardboard box and a walk through the terminal she'd once ruled. Meanwhile, Linda Harris sat in another office signing a suspension form. 90 days without pay, the HR director explained. Mandatory ethics and bias retraining before you can reapply for active duty. Linda nodded, pale and silent. "Mr. Reed requested leniency in your case," the director added. "He said everyone deserves a chance to learn." Linda looked up in surprise, her throat tight. "He said that?" Across the city, Sky Air technicians worked through the night installing new AI monitoring systems at every gate. Engineers mounted small cameras above check-in counters, linking them to software built by Aerolink itself. The program analyzed tone, gestures, and language patterns in real time. If staff used discriminatory language or showed aggression, an alert appeared on a supervisor's screen within seconds. A week later, Sky Air's official accounts posted Elaine Porter's statement. "Yesterday, our employees at JFK treated Mr. Marcus Reed with unacceptable disrespect. Their behavior was discriminatory, wrong, and contrary to our values. I take full responsibility for the culture that allowed this to occur." Effective immediately, Sky Air is implementing mandatory bias training, independent diversity audits, and AI monitoring at all gates. We will donate $1 million to organizations advancing racial equity in travel. We will do better. The post gained over 2 million reactions in its first 12 hours. Comments poured in. Finally, some real accountability. This is how you respond. Respect to Mr. Reed for handling it with grace. At Aerolink's headquarters in Atlanta, Marcus sat in his glass-walled office overlooking the runway. His assistant entered quietly. Sky Air has met every condition. All employees enrolled in training. Donation transferred. Monitoring fully operational at 350 gates. Marcus nodded. Good. Keep records public. He glanced at the endless lines of planes taking off and landing. The world kept moving, but something fundamental had shifted. His phone buzzed, a message from an unfamiliar number. Mr. Reed, I'm the businessman who spoke up for you at Gate C9. Flew Sky Air again today. The difference in attitude was remarkable. Thank you for changing things. He smiled faintly and set the phone down. It wasn't about revenge. It was about proof that respect could become standard. Later that evening, Emily Park sat at her dorm desk editing a follow-up video. Her first stream had reached 5 million views. She spoke softly into the camera. When I started recording, I didn't know who Marcus Reed was. I just knew something felt wrong. Now the airline industry is changing because one man stayed calm and refused to be silent. Remember that. Change doesn't start with shouting. It starts with standing firm. Her video trended again, spawning thousands of discussions about racial bias and systemic reform. Colleges invited her to speak about digital activism. She always ended her talks with the same line. The truth needs witnesses. Over the next month, other airlines adopted similar bias monitoring systems. Customer service departments rewrote training manuals. Executives held emergency seminars about dignity and diversity. At Sky Air, staff noticed something they hadn't felt in years. Passengers smiling at them. Conversations that began with kindness instead of tension. For Marcus Reed, the incident had become more than a headline. It was a blueprint. Every action afterward was measured, deliberate, strategic. He knew people would watch his next move, and he intended to make it count. He authorized a new corporate initiative called the Reed Standard, a partnership between Aerolink and multiple airlines promoting equitable treatment in all customer interactions. It included real-time reporting tools, mentorship for minority employees, and an annual ethics audit open to the public. The announcement went viral again, but this time with optimism instead of outrage. Comments flooded timelines. Finally, leadership with integrity. This is what progress looks like. Strategic justice beats emotional reaction. 3 months after the incident, Sky Air's stock not only recovered but rose 12% higher than before the crisis. Investors cited increased trust and public goodwill as the reason. Employee surveys showed morale climbing sharply. For Marcus, victory wasn't the numbers. It was the quiet messages he began receiving from people he'd never met. Letters, emails, handwritten notes. One came from a high school student in Ohio. I showed your video in my civics class. I want to study business ethics now. Thank you for proving that power can be used for good. He read everyone. Each message reminded him that dignity wasn't a luxury. It was the foundation of every human exchange, and still, the story hadn't finished unfolding. 6 months after the confrontation at Gate C9, the airport looked different. New digital displays reminded passengers of Sky Air's commitment to equality and respect. Every employee badge carried a silver emblem with the words "Integrity First." The AI bias alert monitors had become a quiet presence above each counter, blinking softly, rarely triggered. Marcus Reed walked through Terminal C surrounded by a ripple of recognition that followed him everywhere now. Some people whispered, some smiled, others simply nodded. He preferred the quiet greetings. He wasn't a celebrity. He was a reminder. A security officer saluted lightly. "Good afternoon, Mr. Reed. Just wanted to say things really are different around here." "I'm glad to hear that," Marcus said. "Keep it going." Back at Aerolink headquarters, the office buzzed with reports. His assistant, Maya, placed a folder on his desk. Harvard Business School finalized the case study on your strategy. They titled it the Reed Standard, Economic Leverage as a Tool for Justice. It's going to be required reading next semester. Marcus smiled faintly. Let's hope it inspires more listening than applause. The ripple effect had grown far beyond aviation. Customer service companies, banks, even hotel chains requested access to Aerolink's bias detection system. Tech magazines called it the conscience of the counter. Across the country, Universities used Emily Park's original footage to teach about digital witness culture. She had become a respected advocate for ethical technology, focusing on how cameras in ordinary hands could create extraordinary accountability. That afternoon, Marcus received a letter. The handwriting was uneven, the ink slightly smudged. "Dear Mr. Reed, you don't know me, but I was the teenager sitting by the window that day. My name is Sarah Lynn. Watching you stay calm while the world was unfair changed how I see everything. I'm studying law now. I want to make systems work for people, not against them." He reread the note twice, then placed it with dozens of others in a drawer labeled Gate C9 letters. The following week, Marcus stood at a conference podium in Washington, D.C., receiving the National Medal for Business Ethics. The room was filled with executives, community leaders, and journalists. When the applause faded, he spoke simply. "I didn't set out to make headlines," he said. "I just refused to let humiliation define the moment. Real power isn't loud, it's consistent. It means using influence to make fairness standard, not exceptional." He paused, letting the quiet stretch. Economic accountability changes behavior faster than anger ever could. But compassion is what keeps change alive. Choose both. That night, social feeds flooded with clips of his speech. Comments echoed a single sentiment: strategic justice beats emotional revenge. In the months that followed, Skyair's passenger satisfaction reached record highs. Complaints dropped by half. Employees reported feeling safer speaking up about mistreatment. Even former critics admitted that transparency had rebuilt trust. One spring morning, Marcus received a call from Elaine Porter. Her voice carried relief instead of tension. "Marcus, I wanted you to know the board approved permanent funding for the diversity audits. They named the initiative after you, the READ program." He laughed softly. "Names don't matter. Results do." "They do when they remind people what right looks like," she replied. Before hanging up, she said something that stayed with him. "The day you walked onto that plane, I thought you'd destroy us. Instead, you made us better." He didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "That was the point." Outside his office window, a Skyair jet lifted into a blue Atlanta sky. On its tail was the silver emblem, "Integrity First." Marcus watched it climb higher until it disappeared into sunlight. A small streak of metal carrying thousands of strangers who would never know his name, but would benefit from his restraint. He thought of the crowd at Gate C9, the trembling gate agent, the frightened child asking why someone was being mean, the phones raised like tiny mirrors reflecting truth. Every story has noise, he realized, but only some find an echo strong enough to change the tone of a system. And his story, quiet, strategic, and relentless, was still echoing. 2 years later, the world was still talking about what had happened at Gate C9. The READ standard had reshaped not just an airline but an entire industry. Every major carrier had adopted bias detection systems. Diversity training had become as routine as safety drills. Marcus never let the success turn into a trophy. He spent his days mentoring new executives, teaching them that ethics and profit were not opposites. One morning, as sunlight poured across his office floor, his assistant walked in with a white envelope. No address, no company logo, only his name written neatly across the front. He opened it carefully. "Mr. Reed, my name is Jacob Morales. I was the boy who asked my mom why the lady was being mean that day. I'm 16 now. In school, we watched the video of you staying calm when everyone else was angry. My teacher called it the power of composure. I just wanted to say thank you for showing me that strength doesn't have to shout." Marcus read it twice, his chest tightening. He placed the letter beside the one from Sarah Lynn and smiled. Change was never loudest in headlines. It lived in letters like these. A few weeks later, he was invited to speak at the United Nations Global Forum on Ethical Leadership. The room held presidents, entrepreneurs, and activists from every continent. When his name was called, the applause felt less like celebration and more like acknowledgement. He began with a story. 2 years ago, I stood at an airport gate accused of being a fraud. I could have shouted. I could have demanded. Instead, I stood still, because sometimes stillness speaks louder than fury. He let the silence breathe before continuing. What happened that day wasn't just about race or status. It was about a system that forgot its purpose, to serve with fairness. We can't legislate respect, but we can make it unprofitable to ignore. The room was silent, waiting. Marcus's voice softened. Justice doesn't start in courtrooms or boardrooms. It starts in ordinary places. Ticket counters, classrooms, checkout lines, where someone decides whether to see another person as equal. That's where systems live. That's where they change. He paused again, letting the moment land. Real justice isn't revenge. It's prevention. The goal isn't to punish. It's to make sure no one else has to stand alone the way I did. When he stepped down from the podium, people rose to their feet, not in thunderous ovation, but in quiet respect. That evening, as he left the building, Marcus walked through the plaza lined with reporters. He declined interviews and instead turned toward a small group of students waiting near the entrance. They had notebooks and questions. One asked, "Mr. Reed, what's the secret? How did you stay calm that day?" He smiled. "Because I wasn't fighting for myself. I was fighting for the idea that dignity has no price." The students nodded, scribbling every word. Later that night, in his hotel room overlooking the city lights, Marcus stood by the window and watched planes rise and vanish into the clouds. Each one carried hundreds of people, different faces, accents, lives, all trusting that they'd be treated fairly once they reached the gate. That was the victory. His phone buzzed once more. A message from Emily Park, now a respected investigative journalist. "Just finished my documentary about Gate C9. Premieres tomorrow. It's called The Day Silence Spoke. Thank you for letting the world see what integrity looks like." He typed back, "Thank you for witnessing it." As he set the phone down, he thought of every person who had written to him, every employee who now looked passengers in the eye with respect, every child who would grow up believing calm could be powerful. Somewhere out there, a flight attendant greeted a tired traveler with a genuine smile. Somewhere, a young man in jeans and worn sneakers stepped onto a plane without a second glance from anyone. Marcus closed his eyes and took a long breath. The sound of jet engines rolled faintly through the night air. The world hadn't changed overnight, but it had shifted, enough to prove that one steady voice could echo farther than 1,000 shouts. He whispered to himself, "That's what justice sounds like." And in that quiet room, surrounded by the hum of a city still moving, Marcus Reed finally allowed himself to rest, knowing that respect once demanded had become routine.